Hey, this is Jason J. Lewis, Superman from Justice League Action, and you're watching SuperWonder Legacy.
You're strong.
I know.
Are you a sight for sore eyes?
It's nice to have someone who likes you for being you.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy. I am Jared. I am here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hello, hello.
And today we are discussing, DC and Marvel have both done multiple attempts. And by the way, Nemo, we're doing both Ultimates. They both tried multiple times to modernize their line for the modern audience, if you will. And DC does that through reboots, but now with Absolute. And then Marvel has tried that twice with the Ultimate line. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, because they both really tried to keep their characters relevant. But anyway, so Britt, why don't you start us off? And Britt is muted.
I'm here.
All right, good. All right.
So DC and Marvel has tried to keep things fresh. These characters are 90 plus years old, so you can't keep telling the same story. Well, that is a hard thing to do, of course, as far as DC's continuity right now. But Marvel has tried to keep things fresh, for better or worse. So within that, some of the things that they've tried is created controversy. It has, for again, the better or the worse, and it's mainly to gouge a new generation of fans. And that's the thing, because every generation has its likes and dislikes. Some things can have longevity, I'll say 80s, 90s music. A lot of people refer to that period of time. And now in modern era of music, you have people, you have the newer artists sampling older music beats. So that is something that happens in media. We also have reboots or remakes of older movies. We've had they've had remakes of Pet Sematary. They've had remakes of Jason Halloween type stuff, even older cartoons trying to reinvent the wheel for the new generation. But in Marvel, I don't know much about Marvel Ultimate Universes.
I
only
got you.
know. Well, thank you. I only know the current one, and really from, of course, the Bird app and the reactions to at least Spider-Man. To be on the Bird app in real time, to see the reaction from when it was first announced to the reactions of how it ended, is very telling, and it really connects to how Rebirth was for DC, and now, the current state of DC, and also how post-crisis was, and a lot of the revisionist history that the fans like to spew as well.
Hell yeah.
So then you have DC, where, as we've said multiple times, it's also in a documentary, it's also in a bunch of write-ups, that WB pressured DC to, get the sales up for the comic division, because they felt like it was worthless being that the cells was in the toilet. So 2010, 2011, they, you know, it it wasn't um planned out as far as they could, you know, because they had to act fast. So they basically just had the first year, and it was just kind of like we're just gonna see what happens, you know. So that is how the New 52 came about. And then after 5 years, they started fumbling everything, you know, with the DCU initiative that really just torpedoed everything to Convergence, and now you have Rebirth. Rebirth was a nostalgic road trip back to post crisis. Now DC is in whatever initiative they are in to, I wouldn't even say they are joining, you know, the modern stuff to the older stuff. It's just in a way of just throwing things together and trying to make it fit like a, a jigsaw puzzle with some pieces that are still missing. They're trying to jam pieces together, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And so obviously they needed something else, and they really did New 52 2.0 with Absolute. Absolute is the darker version of the characters, the more Michael Bay mixed with Frank Miller, you know, as far as Batman goes. Wonder Woman is darker. She was actually supposed to be what a lot of fans think New 52 was, which is, you know, that rough, bloodthirsty goddess of war. And then Superman is the emo loner boy.
Sorry. All right. Yeah. So, and that's very good information. And yeah, that is very true. And that's really funny because the same people that were like blasting Superman for being like for being like darker and such are the same people that like universally adopted like Absolute. But
Well, the
we've
thing
said
is,
that.
well, the thing is right now with Absolute Superman is Aaron isn't quite tapping into, he says a lot of what he's going to do, you know, and how like just it was reported by Bleeding Cool that he is tapping into the angry immigrant, you know. But what exactly does that mean? Because you can execute this very poorly.
Yeah.
And he also basically let the spoiler out that Black Adam will be the next villain. And there's a problem with that because um new new 52 Absolute Superman, his first of all, he's not really taking on his own villains.
I mean,
Like
he had
you
Parasite
come
and
on, that was
Brainiac.
just one issue so far. Um I mean, to actually make it like a big deal though,
Ah, okay,
is
I see.
other, you know, you have even the second volume of Absolute Superman is called Son of a Demon. You know, that is taking from Batman, and you also have the Al Ghouls as the main villain. So now you have Black Adam as the next main villain. And it does have this sort of racial stereotype within that. It, of course, is probably not intentional, but if it is, you know, it's very counterproductive to saying that Superman is supposed to be an immigrant, but yet you have his villains as, you know, POC. It's
Here's the
just,
thing on that, Britt. I know people would probably say don't use Ra's al Ghul, but it's like if they used any villain that happens to be a person of color, where it, because with Ra's al Ghul, it is kind of leans into that like racial area of like where he's from. So it's like anyone says that and like leans into like racist culture, he's going to be accused of being a racial stereotype.
well, yeah, but it all depends on the motivation and how the story is executed. And
Okay.
apparently, from, you know, fans of the Al Ghul's, especially Talia, it was not good. So I would rather because I don't know much about the rules, I just know the surface level of them. I would take word from the actual fans, because they have studied the character. They know, Talia's
Hmm,
ups and downs. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of
hmm.
biasness here and there, but I've seen some Talia fans that know, what they're talking about.
That's true. That's true. So, all right. So for a little backup, hey, what's up, Anthony? So here's some backup, some information for this because a lot of this is the same. So okay, so the '90s and 2000s were like a very rough time for Marvel because Britt, did you know that Marvel went bankrupt?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, because what happened is, so you had in the '90s where you had all those gimmicks and stuff when Image showed up, and a lot of when the collectors market like pop, when the bubble burst, that's when Marvel went bankrupt. So one of the things that they did is that's when they sold off like all the movie rights, like Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and such. So one of the things that they did is they brought in, I think it was Bill Giamis, I want to say. By the way, for hey, what's up, Castle Grace Skull? So for the purpose of this show, I am suspending the He Who Must Not Be Named title from Bendis because for obvious reason, I'm going to be using his name a lot. So just bear with me. So what happened was, all right, so to that idea, they wanted to get new people into the comic books, but the problem is there was too much continuity and there was like no jumping on points for any of these books. And so what happened was, so they went to Bendis and said, okay, relaunch Spider-Man from #1. Pretend you are creating Spider-Man, but make it modern. So instead of him being bitten by a radioactive spider, it was like he was bitten by like a like augmented spider. And a lot of the movies use this origins too, where they tried to like essentially modernize it into making sure that like more people at the time could like add on to this. And slowly as Ultimate Spider-Man happened, that's when you had like other versions. That's where you had like the universe really expanding because you had then the Ultimate Fantastic Four. The two of the Ultimate Fantastic Four is they were all like relative teenagers and stuff. And Reed, who will be very important later, is like is not with Sue or anything like that, but it's the way they got their powers in the Ultimate Universe is they tried to open a portal to what's called the negative zone, and basically it's like an alternate dimension, and the portal went wrong and they all got the powers. Then you have the X-Men, who you find this out in Ultimatum, but I'm just going to tell you they're right there. So when Cap went into the ice in World War II, there were multiple attempts to recreate the super soldier serum. In this universe, that's what created the Hulk. Bruce Banner was trying to recreate the super soldier serum, but he thought gamma radiation would be the key. So he gamma dosed himself and turned himself into the Hulk. The other thing the government did is they tried to create their own super soldiers, and that's how you get Wolverine. So in the Ultimate Universe, Britt, the mutants are not like genetic things. It's just like they were created to trying to recreate the super soldier serum. So that's the first part.
Mm-hmm.
So then you had with Mark. So I forget who was doing Fantastic Four, but I know Bendis was doing Ultimate Spider-Man. That he would be the writer on that series throughout its entire run. And then Ultimate X-Men was Millar at first, and then it was someone else. But anyway, so then they were like, okay, so let's have our Avengers. In this universe, they're called the Ultimates. And this is where you have a lot of the good and bad of the Ultimate Universe. So same thing. Cap goes into the ice. He comes out. This is also when the Black Nick Fury was introduced in the comics. So Samuel L. Jackson owes his Marvel Studios job to this comic book. And so it was the idea that so they wanted a response team because instead of like a nuclear arms race, there's a superhero race, essentially. So it's the idea that so that the government wanted the government wanted like their own team. So what happened was so essentially the Ultimates are a government sponsored superhero team. So Captain America's origin is relatively the same. Hulk, I've mentioned. Iron Man is actually really interesting. So Iron Man is like the regular Iron Man trust fund kid, but what made him want to be a superhero is he has an inoperable brain tumor and is operating on borrowed time. So with his remaining time left, he wants to do some good in the world. So that's Ultimate Iron Man.
Well, that's a good concept.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so then you have the other infamous part of Ultimates are Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym. So, okay, in the regular continuity, what happened, and that has dogged Hank Pym forever since his creation, was, okay, at one point, he backhanded his wife. I'm sure you've seen the images or at least heard about this. So in this, they kind of take it to a little bit too far of the extreme, where like he gets into an actual fight with his wife, a literal fight, and like puts her in the hospital. Then Captain America shows up and beats his ass. Like, it is awesome. But it's one of those. And I was reading this, I'm like, I don't know how we feel about this. But now Thor is actually very interesting. So the idea of Thor being an Asgardian is in this, but at first it's in doubt because you think, what if Thor is just this crazy environmentalist dude that just has like a tech hammer? It turns out he is from Asgard and such, but it's more like they have that doubt in you for like a significant part of the book until he literally brings Asgard, and then it's like, oh wow, and then actual Hawkeye goes, Thor, I'm so sorry I ever doubted you. The other thing in this is that Black Widow is an actual spy to kill the Avengers. She gets engaged to Iron Man, but only does it to essentially get close to him. They find out about it, and then Hawkeye actually kills her. This is also the universe, and this was written by Jeff Loeb. All right, where Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are brother and sister. But let me put it this way. They're the Alabama definition of brother and sister.
Oh, wow.
That's where that was a thing. And I'm like, what the hell is that? But anyway, so you have these books, and they revitalize Marvel. It's a similar effect that you're seeing today with the Absolute Universe and the regular DC, where the current one was dwindling. But then you had this new jumping on point. The difference between the Ultimate Universe and the Absolute is that a lot of the origins stayed the same, whereas in the Absolute Universe, a lot of them are very different. By the way, the other thing about this that they wanted to do is talk about what would like realistic superhero costumes look like. That's why the X-Men have the black leather that they would have in the movies, and Captain America has more of like a military like suit. The other funny part about Ultimate Cap, there was this one scene, okay, it's infamous, where Cap is fighting a villain. The villain tells him to surrender, and Cap points at the A on his helmet and goes, "Surrender? Do you think this A stands for France?"
Okay.
And the funny part is that would be like, that would essentially be like, the funny part is, so it was Mark Millar and Brian Hitch, and Hitch was at a Comic-Con in France, and he was getting hate, and he goes, "Hey, I just drew it. That wasn't that was Mark. That wasn't me." But anyway, so that's the way the universe kind of started off. So then we get to what went right with the Ultimate Universe. So again, perfect entry point. You didn't have to read literally anything. And then what you could do, which a lot of people did at this point, you could go and read the main universe. Now you have a general idea of what these characters are like. You could go, okay, now I got it. And again, to your point right there, long form storytelling, because Ultimate Spider-Man went throughout the entire run, 150 issues. This is one of the few creative teams that stayed on the book. That's also where Miles Morales was created, by the way. So what happened in Ultimate Spider-Man is at some point, Ultimate Peter Parker actually dies, like legit dies at the end of like 100 issues. And then Miles takes over as Spider-Man for the rest. So that's kind of where that came from. And this is the basis behind a lot of the MCU movies, because it's like a lot of it with like S.H.I.E.L.D., there being a Triskelion building. So then you have like, let's see, modern S.H.I.E.L.D., and it like completely like murdered in terms of sales. Like this brought Marvel back from the brink of like the lights were going. It was so bad that the lights were going to shut down. That's how bad Marvel was in terms of bankruptcy. Now, let's talk about what went wrong with the Ultimate Universe. So what you have here, so you have everything that's good. So then you get to like the shock value of the books. You had this event called Ultimatum, and it was the idea that they wanted to like essentially like soft reboot, almost DC rebirth the Marvel Ultimate Universe. Isn't it kind of funny, Britt, that whenever they try to DC rebirth something, it ends up blowing up in anyone's faces?
Right.
It's almost as if that's a bad idea. So Jeff Loeb wrote a book called Ultimatum. So what had happened in Ultimates 3, the way that Ultimates worked is that each book was like essentially like a trilogy of movies. So you had Ultimates 1, Ultimates 2, Ultimates 3. The Scarlet Witch was killed, and this sent Magneto into a rage. So what he did is he used his magnetic powers to play with the poles of the earth and caused a massive tidal wave to come into New York City, and it murdered like half the X-Men, Ultimate Daredevil, like a lot of characters got killed. So then also so this was let's kill as many characters as we can in the most gruesome ways. Oh, by this was also when Ultimate Thor and Cap died. They went to Valhalla because they were more warriors, and Cap was able to come back. Thor didn't return until much later from the help of his groupie, Valkyrie. Yes, Ultimate Valkyrie is just the Thor groupie. So then you have, Giant Man, who is Hank Pym. He comes around a corner and sees Ultimate Blob literally eating Janet. And then the line is, Blob says, tastes like chicken. That's the bottom right image, by the way.
All right.
Yeah, I know. That's the shock value and stuff. And it like really like, this is the storyline that is known as one of the worst storylines in all of Marvel, like literally in all of Marvel. So as it progresses, this is also when Doctor Strange gets killed because Dormammu takes his cape and like chokes him to the point where they actually show bile and vomit coming out of his face, and then until Doctor Strange's head bursts like a balloon, essentially. Magneto snaps Professor X's neck, so Professor X is dead. And then when the Ultimates and X-Men show up at Magneto's castle, Magneto essentially uses So the way I remember it is Wolverine stabs Magneto, but then Magneto takes magnetizes Iron Man's like gauntlets, makes him blast the skin and skeleton, basically blasts Wolverine until he's a skeleton. But then it wasn't until Wolverine finally, somehow as a skeleton, stabbed Magneto again. And then what happens is Wolverine's dead. Cyclops then essentially executes Magneto by using his optic blast to like burn Magneto to a crisp. And then as they're giving as Cyclops is giving a like speech, he is shot in the head by Quicksilver, who then becomes the new Magneto. That's Ultimatum. It's literally let's murder everything as best we can. I remember reading this and I'm like, what the hell is this?
Okay, so now with that whole description of everything, in no way was New 52 about murdering everyone.
You want to talk grimdark? Read Ultimatum.
Exactly. Like now, again with the Bird app and Reddit and wherever else, it's kind of like, okay, so definitely the comparisons and stuff was exaggerated.
Yeah. So then what happens is during around this time in the main so the Ultimate Universe after this took like a massive hit, and then it was like limping along for years. And then so at the same time as around the time that this is happening, Jonathan Hickman, one of the best Marvel writers of all time, he specializes in like long form storytelling. Well, you'll be reading an issue, and like at first it'll seem like this is filler, but then when you read the entire run, you're like, oh my god, this is perfect. He tried to do this with X-Men, but the other writers were douches. Anyway, that's a story for another time. So what you have here is at the same time he was writing at first he was writing Fantastic Four. Then he went to Avengers, and his Avengers run was building towards this event called Secret Wars. I'm sure you've kind of maybe heard tangentially about it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Secret Wars event, the buildup was the universes were colliding called incursions, kind of like in the Doctor Strange movie. That's what that's referencing. And then it would blow up the Earth. So what happens is the Ultimate Universe and the main Marvel Universe are the only two left, and they go to war. And then their universes, and then Dom uses like godlike powers from a being called the Beyonder to recreate the Earth as what's called Battle World. And essentially what that is, it's kind of like Convergence, where there was a patchwork of cities, but it was like a patchwork of different realities and like what if books, essentially, is what it was. Charles Sewell wrote a fantastic one about Civil War, which I'll tell you about later. But what happens is, so at that point, the Ultimate Universe at the end of the storyline is destroyed. It no longer exists, or so we think. But what they did is, so they brought in a bunch of the popular characters into the main Marvel universe, such as Miles Morales. This is how Miles became a character in Marvel. The other character that was brought in is Ultimate Reed Richards, because what happened in this, and I think it was after this, it was after Ultimatum, so he's another casualty. Ultimate Reed became a villain because around this time of the storyline, so when Ultimatum is starting, he's about to propose to Sue. Sue rejects his proposal, and I think Ben Grimm or Johnny are killed in the original tidal wave. So he snaps and goes crazy and starts calling himself the Maker. And so he disappears into the negative zone dimension I talked about earlier, comes back with like this big helmet, and he has actually stretched his skull so that he has more brain capacity. So that's why if you see a funky looking dude in the pictures that has that big long helmet, actually, you know what? He is this guy right here on the side right here. So he hangs out in the main Marvel universe for like a while. And then at this point, Donny Cates, another fantastic Marvel writer, is writing the Venom book. And during an event called, actually, it wasn't really an event, I don't think, was like the main thing. No, it was like during one of the storylines in the Venom run, the Maker, as Ultimate Reed is called, keeps trying to go back to his main universe. And what happens is, Marvel at this point kept teasing that they were relaunching the Ultimate Universe, and they didn't really like give any like ideas about, okay, so how is that going to go? So what happens is, at some point he gets to the Ultimate Universe, but what he decides to do, and he travels to a different Earth now, and that was in the event called Ultimate Invasion. I have the trade right here, and that's the image that's up there. So what happens in Ultimate Invasion is he wants to make it so there's no superheroes to stop him. So he literally uses a time machine and stops each superhero from being like turned into superheroes. Starting with Spider-Man, where he stops the radioactive spider from biting Peter, and this leads to like Peter does not become Spider-Man, Uncle Ben does not die, and instead Aunt May dies. But he's married to Mary Jane, and they have 2 kids, which everyone loves. Captain America is never thawed out, and a lot of stuff. and then he like recreates the Earth in his own image, and he basically rules the world through like a shadow council, essentially. So, so what Marvel did with this, so they relaunched the Ultimate Universe under Jonathan Hickman's like basic direction, and he was the one that was writing Ultimate Spider-Man. And so, you have to understand also, Ultimate Spider-Man is to Spider-Man fans what Absolute Wonder Woman is to Wonder Woman fans, in that you have a shitty run currently going on, because at the time it was the Zeb Wells run, which everyone hated. And then you have Ultimate Spider-Man, which is literally everything the fans wanted. And then in the same way that you have the Tom King run, where you also have like the main, the Absolute Wonder Woman book. So that's kind of where that book went, and it became like the top selling book at Marvel, to the point where one of the creative heads at Marvel was being super petty about it, because no one expected Ultimate Spider-Man to sell as well as it did, to the point where, again, the Ultimate Universe that Marvel is nuking is like the biggest thing at Marvel. So also in this universe, Thor is a prisoner in Asgard, and Sif is his jailer. This will be very important later. So at a certain point, there's like an event that ends up killing Tony Stark's father. So Tony becomes essentially Iron Boy, which that is a mantle that he had in the past of the comics. So he starts an underground revolution with the Ultimates. So as opposed to the Ultimates being a government-sanctioned superhero team in the previous Ultimate Universe, in this, the Ultimates are fighting against the government, which I always felt that like juxtaposition is actually really, really well done. Also, Thor and Sif are together. Isn't that funny, Britt, how, again, Superman and Wonder Woman in this universe are together?
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that very funny? But, so that would be where, like, this one, Ultimate X-Men. All right, Ultimate X-Men is a very interesting one, because it's done by Peach Momoko. It's done, it's covering a X-Men character called Armor. Here's the problem with it. It's not addressing the characters that X-Men fans want to see, like Cyclops and stuff. So they literally launched a book called Ultimate Wolverine, where it's the idea that, so you know the basic story about Wolverine, right?
Yes.
So in this universe, he's the Winter Soldier. And then he eventually breaks out and is able to like be redeemed and stuff. But it's like he's the Winter Soldier and goes on a revenge quest against the people that turn him into revenge. Magic and Colossus are actually on the Maker side. It's really, really cool. So you have that. You have Ultimate Black Panther, which is where the Ultimate Storm debuted in. So there's that, your girl, and then you have the Ultimates. Now and now they kept building toward the Maker returning, because the Maker went somewhere. But what they revealed is, at least I think, as I understand this, the planet is the Maker.
You know, that kind of sounds like what DC is trying to do with the end of KO.
Yeah, kind of. Or like how Darkseid is kind of influencing the Absolute Universe.
Yeah.
That's what they kind of did. So here's the lessons Marvel learned. So the alternate continuity works. That's fine. Finite storytelling prevents... But here's the problem with the finite storytelling, Britt. And this is why I added that last point. All of these books were the biggest selling books, except for Ultimate X-Men, but for the reasons I told you. But the X-Men books are a mess currently, like a really bad mess. So this is the highest selling thing of Marvel. What does Marvel do, Britt?
They nuke it.
Again, this is why when you told me Marvel seems to have their stuff together, I was like, nope. Say what you want about DC, but they're not this stupid.
I mean, Marvel seems like if you go at a certain threshold of sales dipping or whatever, they will relaunch that book. At least the thing is, they will relaunch the books that they think that are sellers. With DC
Even when
right now, yes, but with DC, they are trying to do creative, freedom or whatever. You pick and choose whatever character that you want. But they aren't really giving the diverse characters. I mean, the fact that you have to riot and ask for a Vixen book, you know,
Here's the
um,
thing on that, Britt. Here's the problem with that hashtag. I know what you're talking about. Here's the problem with those people. They're lying.
well, I wouldn't say those people like that, Jared. Don't say that.
Well, I'm saying with the fans that started that whole like revolt, they're lying. There have been because the way that DC works is a series starts as a mini series. If it sells, then it gets upgraded to an ongoing series. That's the way the
All
system
right,
works.
but who cares about Jonah Hex, Demon?
Oh, here's the thing, Britt. Those characters in the past have sold well better than the milestone characters.
Okay, but what about Vixen? She's had books that sold.
Has she had a solo series?
Yes, she has. That's the issue. That is the issue that she has had solo books and they were sellers. It's just the fact that she hasn't had one in so long that, yeah, you wouldn't know about it. And they're not giving the, more diverse characters a chance. But you give a chance to, again, that is a good comparison, Jonah Hex, though, that we know they've given a book to that character in the
But here's the
DP2.
thing, Britt. The difference between the different thing about Next Level, that's creator driven. It could be no one's pitching for these characters.
So you are okay. So the people who have pitched, though,
Mhm.
the thing is, first of all, it's no diversity whatsoever. Most of them are male writers, and the characters are, ones that are again not diverse. That's the issue.
Here's the problem on that
Stephanie,
though.
the thing is,
Yeah, go ahead.
Stephanie Williams said that she had pitched Vixen, and the thing that she got rejected. So how can you say that it's creator driven and that these are books that have been pitched, but a a woman of color had pitched a diverse book and it was rejected?
Well, the other problem about this, Britt, is like when you're talking about. Here's the problem here. The other problem that DC had, and this is why Christopher Priest was like, "I'm out," is because oftentimes with these writers, sometimes they do force the black writer to write the black character, and Priest was like, I don't want to do that. Why would I want to do that? It's like they try to limit which books the character can do. Now, here's the thing with this, though, Britt. Particularly with the milestone characters. Let's use them as the example. Here's the problem with using the milestone characters as examples. Number one, DC does not own those characters. They publish them in collaboration with Milestone Entertainment. This is what they don't tell you. Number one, so all of we don't get enough books of these characters is majorly Milestone's fault for starting and stopping. They keep starting and stopping, and there was a big deal. They made a big deal like a couple of years ago that they were relaunching. Okay. Then they tell you that Static Shock is $1 billion franchise. Their words. And I'm like, okay, that's not true because the Static Show was like decades ago, number one. Number two, if Static were really a $1 billion franchise, wouldn't movie studios be tripping over themselves to make a movie about Static Shock?
I mean, they
So
have had it. They've had Static in development forever. They wanted a live action. It's just that it never happened.
exactly. And my point being, it's like, and this is not. I'm not like blaming Milestone totally because DC plays a part in this. But the point is, if these books really don't sell, now here's the thing: the advantage is the Dakota Incident book that sold pretty well, so they have this potential. But if these books don't sell don't sell a certain threshold, it's what do you want DC to do? Because Britt, what do I always say about DC?
It is a business.
Yeah, and
Well, yeah, but
Mhm.
okay. So
Yeah,
going back.
go ahead.
So first, the thing is, the difference is DC isn't putting a black writer on a black character book. That's not what Stephanie's saying. She actually wants to write Vixen or Nubia or things. It's the fact that it's getting rejected is the issue in the what's been talked about. If they are limiting the the creatives of okay, I don't want to write this certain character and you're basically stereotyping or whatever like that, then yeah, that will be another issue. But this issue is that you talk about diversity, you talk about creative, driven and things like that, but behind the scenes you are being a little bit of limiting and conservative. And isn't that counterproductive?
Well, the other thing, Britt, is like again, and Scott said, yeah, we have these, but we have like books on the black characters coming out that we have yet to announce. We're just putting the final touches on the announcements. Because here's the thing: when people were like complaining about those characters on the like all in next advertisement, yeah, they told you and more. Those weren't the only characters being announced.
I mean, but you still, yeah, come on. You still are to have at least one book ready or something like that. You can't just start off with just non-diversity at all. That's the
I
thing.
would say non-diversity. Kate's there.
That, but what is her ethnicity?
Hang on, I'll tell you. Well, she's gay, so you can't say that's not diverse.
And who else? Well, Constantine that has it. Zatanna. Let's see. That still has nothing to do. Her orientation is not the issue. It's her ethnicity or race.
Mm-hmm.
That is you don't have the representation
Okay.
of that is the issue. And yeah, people have the right to question this and side eye it, even I side eye it, because you say, oh yeah, we're gonna have black characters in solo books and they're gonna be announced soon or something like that put in the final touches. But it feels like that is more of a reaction than a genuine statement being said. Yeah, you can say and more, but your initial announcement did not have that. So
Well,
yeah,
it
you're
could be
going to
those
have
were the pitches that were, for the most part, done.
yeah, but I mean it could have been. But going on the timeline of what Stephanie and really why I'm bringing up Stephanie is because she has voiced it. Stephanie has said she pitched a Vixen book a long time ago. So it's kind of like if she continuously doing so and is being rejected, but yet these books are now, you know, um, finalized and promoted and everything like that, then what's the issue?
Well, and the thing is, like Stephanie basically said that like has been hinting that she got a dream project with DC. So hey, could be they did finally accept it.
They finally accepted because fans rioted it. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, I can give you that. I can give you that. But the other thing is like here's the other problem, Britt. So, what was the hashtag that you and I that we started? What was it called?
Yeah, King off London.
Okay, that's what it is. So the hashtag is not a direct attack on DC themselves, right?
No, I mean,
And we were very careful of that.
true.
But I'm just saying, when you make a hashtag called hashtag DC so white, that's a. Do you really think DC's gonna pay attention to you if you say that?
I mean, it depends. If you are like, I think Snyder has paid attention to it because he wouldn't have directly stated. that they're trying to get books now. If that wasn't some didn't have so much of an effect.
No, well, that's true. That's true there. But there are even some people that are saying, "Oh, it's too little, too late," and I'm like, guys,
Because the reason why it is because it's a reaction to fans having to resort to that of asking and complaining or voicing that to for
oh
them
yeah.
to say, well, okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and give you the books that you want. You should have did that in the first place.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you this. If DC does this and the books don't sell, then it's like, I'm sorry, what do you expect them to do?
Well, that's the thing. At least give the books a chance.
Yeah,
Even if you know that business wise and they see the sales or whatever, even if they even if they know that, you at least give that certain concept a chance. If it flops, it flops, then yeah, fans need to be quiet, you know. But if
because
it doesn't, then that means that DC needs to actually, you know, put more effort and and be more open than to fans or to, diverse concepts then.
yeah, my issue, Britt, is like what I do see is a lot of these fans they suffer from the same thing that I see on Twitter all the time, where people think their favorite character is more popular than they actually are, because it's like relatively when you compare the milestone characters to the mainstream DC characters, they're not as popular, they're not as big. I know Static had a show back in the 90s, but again, that show was in the 90s. Him showing up in Young Justice is not did not remind someone who Static is.
Well, yeah, I mean, we see that with Lois and Chloe's fans.
Oh yeah,
We saw that with New 52, with Superman and Wonder Woman. You have a whole bunch of complaints, but the sales say otherwise, that the book sold, but then bringing back post-crisis Superman with a wife and kid, it could barely sell 35K.
yeah, exactly. But it's like that's my point there. So I'm like, if you're asking DC to take a hit, here's the thing. Yeah, the problem is you really have to like if you're asking DC to take a hit, you got to ask it to take a hit on something that's less of a risk. That's the main thing. Because asking DC to invest in Wonder Woman is different than asking DC to invest in Milestone.
Well, that's true because Diana is their first, prominent.
She's in the Trinity, so it's like it's only logical, right?
Well, I don't care about the Trinity because that's just lip service. But
Well,
I'm
I'm
saying,
saying from DC's marketing perspective.
yeah, sure.
I love how not convinced you are. But yeah, Cameron says, as someone whose favorite character is Beast Boy, I have long accepted that he works better on the Titans than Solo. Yeah, and it could be that maybe the Milestone characters just work better in their own stuff, because, Britt, they keep relaunching this. The minute you have to relaunch a book more than 2 times, okay, if you have to relaunch a book more than 2 times and it still doesn't work, maybe there's something up here.
Well, exactly. There's one more thing before we switch
Yeah.
off to New 52 was, like I said, we see the reaction firsthand of the newer, Ultimate Universe and how they blew it up. Well,
Yeah.
just like, with Rebirth, how the fans were so happy to have Peter married, with kids. Well, at the end of this, I would say midway, I began to see a lot of criticism of the book and how, yeah, you have that concept, but the story itself is dragging, is boring, or it doesn't have that substance that it should have. Their daughter didn't have much going on. I think she disappeared a couple of times. You have Felicia as this 16-year-old now and romancing the son. the son is just being, a spider boy or whatever. And but it really wasn't as compelling as the fans really, expected. But because of the marriage and wanting that traditional list vibe, of course it was going to sell. Of course it was going to, you know, um, they were going to accept it. But at the end and how it ended, it just seemed like it felt to the fans, and I guess this, again with the Bird app, it felt pointless. And that was the thing that we were talking about with Rebirth too. You had that concept of Superman married and having a kid, Superboy, and playmates with Damien, but the substance wasn't there. And
Well,
now you're stuck with, this concept or this status quo that honestly burnt out, faster than expected.
I like that. But well, the other thing on that is like as far as like the daughter playing a role, she wasn't really like the main character of the book. That was Spider-Man, and the son. So it was like, I mean, yeah, Peter went through the most stuff because it's a spider. It's ultimately a Spider-Man book, pun intended. So you can't really like say why didn't they do anything? Why didn't they do anything? But I understand. The one criticism I do understand is Mary Jane not doing a lot or like not
Exactly.
getting a lot of
She was
character development.
just
She was just
ex-
there.
exactly.
I
She was
get that.
just yeah, she was like Lois. She was just the wife. Just to say that she's the love interest and the wife of, the main character. And that is something that, a lot of these fans needs to take account for. That you want these certain ships, you want these certain status quos, but how does that benefit all the characters? So you have this concept that is supposed to be a family thing, but all you have are tons of variant covers with the family, spotlighted, but the daughter doesn't have much to do with the plot. She's just there. Mary Jane doesn't have her own, unique storyline. She's just there for support, or she's there for the romance, checkbox of the romance. And then the son, he had a plot point, but it still felt like he was just Peter Jr., especially with the romance with Felicia. So it's like, again, yeah, it's pretty much like a be careful what you wish for type thing.
I see that. I see that. I can definitely believe that. But so one more screw up of Marvel that I want to bring up for this is actually, you know what? No, but it's like the idea. But it's like to end this. It's like now they vindicate. So Hickman left Ultimate Spider-Man, and he basically said, I didn't expect them to say they're ending the universe. I just thought they were going to keep it going for a little bit. So it's like that's the stupidity of Marvel again. Because I was even talking to the owner of my comic book store about this because it's like, wait a minute. This would be like DC in the height of the absolute universe saying, okay, we're good. We're ending it. And I'm like, what do you? This is on the level, Britt, of when happening and it was in the peak. Let's replace all of the characters that are getting movies.
Right.
That's how stupid this is. Because it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. It's like, so you're taking your best-selling thing, and you know why it is, Britt? Do you know why Marvel does this?
No.
Hubris, because they're the top-selling comic book publisher. They're like, oh, they'll still read the book. It's like with Ultimate Spy, with like them deliberately antagonizing the fans because of like with Spider-Man and Mary Jane, and what they it's like the because they're like, oh, they'll still buy the books. They're called the Marvel zombies, Britt. Buy red or you're dead. That's basically the concept where they'll buy Marvel books no matter what.
Well, exactly.
And the other thing, speaking of relaunches, so Marvel tried pushing a lot of these like characters like Ms. Marvel, America Chavez. America Chavez is the character that comes from a lesbian island, and you know what her catchphrase is?
No.
Holy menstruation.
What?
Yeah, that's her catchphrase. That's how surface level most of these characters are. Now, Ms. Marvel has kind of grown on her own. She's fine. She's fine. She had a rocky start, but they did a lot to like make the fans more amiable to the character, so she's fine. But it's like a lot of these characters were extremely surface level, and then again, you replace all these big characters and push the checkbox characters. This was also it's like, remember in 2020 2021 I showed you Snowflake and Safe Space.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what the idea is that they're like, so Marvel can afford to take these risks. And it's like they've relaunched Captain Marvel Carol Danvers like 8 times in the past because that's what they do. The book doesn't sell with their current like lineup. So they're like, okay, let's relaunch with a number one. Let's keep relaunching with an, because number ones always sell. So let's keep relaunching so we can keep these books going out. So we can say we have a diverse line when really these characters just don't sell.
Lord.
And remember, Britt, future state, the 5G was going to be all new, all different DC, where they replace all the characters people cared about, and then just like Clark and Diana and Bruce, they'll just be the Elseworlds characters. Can you imagine if they actually did that, Britt?
I mean, that's definitely a death note.
Yeah, that would have killed the company because it's like, yeah, you could have it as like a temporary story and stuff, but it's like you really can't do that. But anyway, speaking of DC, let's move to the New 52.
Yes, our favorite era.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Back when DC had swagger.
exactly.
DC went from having swagger to being an old man who thinks he has swagger. Here's what it is. Here's what it is, Britt. So New 52 is like a 30-year-old guy that's like all full of life, ready to begin his life. Rebirth and where we are, Rebirth, really? You know what that is? That's an old man who buys a Lamborghini because he's having a midlife crisis.
Exactly.
That's exactly the way I would cover that.
And you know what was funny, that they were trying to say that New 52 was that, but the characters are, obviously younger. And this is how, pretty much post-crisis started, of having this newer generation be able to grow up with a new iteration of the character. And why post-crisis fans were not, did not let fans have that. It's just so, like, you don't own the characters. So why can't, this newer generation have that? And also, it says a lot about the gatekeeping and stuff when you talk so much, or Twitter fingers or whatever, and yet you aren't buying the books. DC wouldn't have needed New 52 if, Post Crisis was selling as it should have.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what the New 52 also did that really helped get new readers reading, Britt? So one of the initiatives that they did around this time that people thought was going to close down comic book shops was they also released the issues day and date digitally. People thought, like reasonable people, again, people had concerns and they were legitimate concerns. Okay, are people just going to buy them on like their iPads and not go to comic book shops? But what DiDio saw, and he has this in the Jim Lee autobiographical documentary, by the way, is actually they were working together because, again, people didn't, some people don't live near comic book shops. So obviously they can't pick up their books. So when you have digitally, you can service that side of the fandom and they don't feel left out. They don't feel behind the 8 ball in terms of like continuity and storytelling. And then obviously the thing about it, digital will never replace comics because comics at least have that collectible feature. And it's a sense of like accomplishment and community to pick up your books.
Exactly. That is the one thing that I just don't understand, how, detractors of New 52 talk about it and saying it's a failure. But in the height of, media change, even with Wonder Woman and, being so in, ingrained with mythology, that was 2010s, you know, um, and reading, having a Kindle and everything like that, that is what, you know, was coming about at that time. So, yeah, no, um, it wasn't trying to boot out, the older fans or things like that. It was more so trying to bring new, fans in. And if you, as an older fan, wanted to stay, then that's your prerogative. If you wanted to leave, that's your prerogative too. But it was really just to get it all balanced out
Yeah,
because WB was pressuring them and was going to shut them down. Like, I'm not sure why that whole thing is not being um is like one ear and out the other, or not even
exactly.
going in the ear, you know.
Exactly. And Legion brings up a good point. There's like, now, again, New 52 was not perfect, as we'll talk. And Britt and I, as much as we love this era of DC, yeah, it wasn't perfect. There were some weaknesses with it. But it's like, overall, they had some really fun stuff. Like, okay, here's what I loved about the New 52. They actually took risks on books like OMAC having a book, Men of War. Men of War, Britt. Okay, so Britt, what's that pitch I always have about Steve Trevor?
That book.
It's literally that book. So I recently read it and I'm like, why isn't this a thing? Because this is so cool. But anyway, so Britt, have you read the Earth 2 series?
Not as a whole. I only read the part where it sort of crossed over with the Batman and Superman New 52 book.
All right. So the idea of this is really good. So where this came from, so it's written by James Robinson, who is known for DC as revitalizing the Golden Age Justice Society. So he was already experienced with these characters. Now with the New 52, there was no JSA, no like Golden Age heroes before. So DC still wanted to do that, and luckily DC has a history of putting the Golden Age characters on Earth 2. So they were like, okay, let's do Earth 2 and let's have those characters be at. So at the exact same time in Justice League Origin, Darkseid is invading Earth 0 in Justice League Origin. He is invading, Steppenwolf is invading Earth 2. That's where he kills Wonder Woman. Batman sacrifices himself to take out parademons, and Superman is depowered and captured. Later cloned, but that's another story. So at this point, in this, Diana worships the Roman gods instead of the Greek gods, which are basically the same. And it's like, so the Roman god, basically Hermes, gives his powers to Jay Garrick, and that's how Jay Garrick becomes the Flash. All these characters are younger, by the way. At the same time, by the way, Supergirl of this Earth and Robin of this Earth go through a portal and end up in the main Earth, and that's where you get New 52 Power Girl and Huntress from. They later come back and become the Supergirl and still Huntress of that universe. And what you get for like the main series is these characters not only fighting against, like, let's say Steppenwolf, but also fighting against the government again. So you do get that little champion of the oppressed. What you also discover, Thomas Wayne is alive and he is a Batman. What happened was Thomas Wayne was like a hitman. He stopped after Bruce as Batman, like stopped him from ruining his life before he died, obviously. And then when Bruce sacrificed himself to like stop Apocalypse, that's when Thomas Wayne became Batman. So they kind of like repeated that same idea of like Thomas Wayne becoming Batman, but did a little, in my mind, a little more interestingly than with Flashpoint. Because in this, Thomas Wayne is also addicted to a drug called Mirakuru, which basically gives him superpowers. So at the same time, Steppenwolf has this girl on his side called Fury, and she is Wonder Woman's daughter that he kidnapped and like trained to be like an assassin, essentially. Fury goes on her own character arc, and she becomes the new Wonder Woman and rebels against her. Oh, actually, she doesn't rebel against her father, because what happened to him, what you discover is they cloned Superman, and Superman is now like Brutal, who's this like apocalypse general. Lois Lane's body is destroyed, and her mind is downloaded into Red Tornado, and then she like helps take out Superman, and they discover that he's actually Bizarro. And then it turns out Superman was taken captive, but he sacrificed. He essentially dies, and then that's when Power Girl takes the S off his chest and puts it on her own chest, and becomes Supergirl. At this point, also the Superman of this Earth becomes Val Zod, who we talked about 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks. The point is, we talked about on our Black characters history thing. And he was taken in by the elves when his parents were killed for speaking, for essentially, again, fighting against oppression on Krypton. This is Champion of the Oppressed to the yin yang, Britt. And essentially what this culminates in is Darkseid invades, destroys Earth 2, and at first this is where you get like Future's End, which was a shit show, trust me, of an event. But and I can explain that at a future date. But then you get the Earth 2 survivors show up on an arc, and then they crash land on essentially a remade Earth 2. And that's where you have like all of the different like characters coming together. They eventually reform as the Justice Society. This whole time they're called the Wonders, but now they're called the Justice Society. It's a really good series. But my point being with that is that in the new 52, they had the crazy amount of books that they had for this, like Men of War, OMAC. You had Voodoo had a book. You had Justice League Dark comes from this. And when you look at like the level of creativity that came from this era, and again, it literally saved DC Comics from not existing anymore. Now, what I mean by that, Warner Brothers / AT&T and stuff would have just farmed like licensed out the books to like another company. This saved DC Comics from being a company, from being shut down.
Exactly. And again, you have the modernized characters, and it was also to simplify continuity.
Mm-hmm.
It want again to start fresh. But the thing is, having creators that are so kind of like the possessive ex or something,
Mm-hmm.
who does not want to let go of the past. And that is how the creators, were acting.
Exactly. So you also had like Scott Snyder in Superman. I think it was called Unchained. Yeah, I think it's Unchained. Yeah, basically saying he thought SuperWonder was weird, so he almost had Lois say "I love you," and I'm like, but on the bright side, you also had Aquaman.
I just don't understand how you can say that that's weird. Like,
well, I get that like he's not used to that, but don't be petty. This is why when we interviewed Jeremy Adams and he said he was like a Wonder Bat person, I had no problem with it. Well, it was a shock, but I had no problem with it because when he writes the relationship, he writes it well because he ain't petty.
Well, the thing is, my issue sometimes is that when you ask why, that relationship is always, because of Justice League Unlimited. But it's never referring to the comics. And
well,
they
because
never,
there are no comics.
Well, yeah, but you never refer to Diana's comics or her lore or anything like that. That's my issue. And, even with like Phil Jimenez or Greg Rucka, it's still like, the history behind that of them self-inserting, this sort of wanting Diana to fix the bad boy. But it's never about Diana herself. And it's always going to be about Batman. So to say that SuperWonder is weird when you know the history of that relationship, whether you like it or not, but it's still a mutual, respectful relationship. and also the concept itself of being, you know, to immigrants though. So again, to say it's weird, now that's weird.
Yeah, exactly. And this parasocial relationship some people feel with Lois. But anyway, but it's like in this, you had Scott Snyder on Batman. Now he was the Batman writer on like even in post crisis at this point, and to the point where it seems like Court of Owls, his first arc, was just the next arc of post crisis Batman. But obviously, because it was New 52, they decided, let's move it on. But and that was also where some of the problems lie, and we'll get to that. You also had Aquaman, which is the major reason why Aquaman became like a big character, like a bigger character than he was, and that was the purpose with Jeff Johns. He said, I requested that character because I wanted to take a character that people really made jokes about, and then just show them this character could actually be really, really cool. But so. And then obviously you had Azzarello with Wonder Woman. The Azzarello run I have an interesting relationship with because, yes, I like New 52 Wonder Woman, and I get what Azzarello is going for. I feel like some of the changes were a little misguided, to say the least, but it's like if you take it as a self-contained story because it's so isolated from the main DC universe, it's not bad.
Exactly. I mean, it's very much an Elseworlds, and like I said, within the 2010s, it was a phenomenon to, you know, be ingrained in Greek mythology. You had Percy Jackson, you know, the actual theatrical movie. You had I forgot what movie that was, but it was, I know Henry Cavill was in a movie about Titans or something like that, but that was Greek mythology.
Oh, yeah. That
It was,
was The Immortals.
and I think it was Christian Bale also had some type of Greek mythology movie. So yeah, it was just this whole thing. So seeing that Wonder Woman was tied to that, you know, they thought that that was something, you know, to gravitate to. And also the realism. They wanted, you know, New 52 world to be a little realistic. And honestly, again, you understand that because of being, you know, what the time was.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that. That's why the other thing. That's why they did the Zeus origin, because it's like, look, most of the heroes back then that had some link to Greek mythology were Zeus's kids. So it's like even like Clash of the Titans with Perseus.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's like I understand the only change where I'm like, yeah, I don't think that was a good idea was the Amazons.
Right, right. And even that is still tied to the quote unquote realism of
Which is hilarious, Britt, because when people try and tell me that Wonder Woman's buying stuff because she comes from that island and it's accurate to the Greeks, and I'm like, oh, so that's okay, but the way Azzarello did the Amazons is not okay?
right. It is a very much double standards, yes.
So, Britt, what's the other thing related to Superman and Wonder Woman that the New 52 did that some would say was a top-selling thing at DC, and we may or may not have a podcast centered around?
Right. So they entered a very polarizing relationship, both in story and out. Despite the controversy, it did maintain respectful sales. You know, what's funny is that um, we do not talk about Tomasi's, you know, volumes.
No.
But it still outsold, you know, the Chloe's conversion spinoff book. And it's still the fact that I saw a tweet from Tomasi, and he was displaying the books, you know, that he would have, I guess, at a con.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I did not see Super Wonder at all. And I'm like, well, good, because you don't need to take credit for the book anyway. Whether it's being mean spirited and he wants to act like he never wrote that, we want to act like he
But
never wrote it either.
remember, Britt, Wonder Woman demands the spotlight.
Exactly. So,
Which, when you think about it, when he says that, I don't think he realizes that's kind of a ding on Lois, because when you say she needs a spotlight and I can't just put her in the background, it sounds like you're saying I like Lois because I can just ignore her.
well, in Rebirth, she was ignored. I mean, well, she was given a little spotlight, with some jump in the shark kind of moments. But remember, most of the time she was baking pies,
Hmm.
waiting for Clark and John and baking pies. Um, so yeah, so you have Clark and Diana, and it's you also had cross marketing, which, as we reiterated, I think it was last week or so, but you have hoodies, you have t-shirts, you have um phone cases and skin, you have perfume line, um any type of merchandising, even just advertising itself. You had Clark and Diana together, even post New 52. DC was still marketing them, because that is the marketable couple. Even I would say that Super Wonder is more marketable than Batcat.
Because
Um,
yeah, and it's like, look, I have, because here's the thing, people know what you mean when like a couple calls each other their Superman and Wonder Woman. Oh, you're my Batman, you're my Catwoman. What does that mean?
right. I mean, or trying to say you're Superman and Lois. It's kind of like, no. Um, I just don't, that doesn't feel powerful at all, to say something like that. Um, and especially when the image is Lois being carried.
Yeah, that's the statue, as opposed to, let's say, this beauty where it's them as equals floating.
Exactly. So yeah, so you have these two godlike beings, navigating love, navigating their individual lives as well, their expectation, and trying to basically keep sane. And it's not that they are going to turn into dictators, but it's that emotional roller coaster, and how they can handle that pressure, even with how powerful they are. And then Diana, she challenges Clark, just his perspective of things, because he did grow up very humbled and very kind and respectful. But, well, I would say with New 52 Superman, he does challenge the system. He learned the hard way, though, because in Action Comics, he was tortured by the government. So I think he had a little bit of hesitation, as he grow older. But the fact that he has Diana by his side, he doesn't have to have that hesitation. And then in turn, what Clark gives Diana is this sense of peace, because she doesn't have the secret identity as Clark had. She doesn't understand what that means. It's not that you're hiding or ashamed of who you are. It's just having a bit of peace and privacy.
Yeah,
So that
exactly.
and then you also have just this whole new world of how to create different villains, create new supporting cast members, things like that. And for detractors to say that Clark and Diana being together makes their world smaller, that is so backwards to me, because in order for them to work, you actually have to make their worlds so much bigger, because you have to make threats bigger. You have to make the stakes so much bigger to challenge them. So how is that making their world smaller?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. But it's like, it's again, there's no stakes. Did you read the book? I'm going to answer that for you, Britt. No, they did not read the book, because it's like, if you look, that's why I would say Charles Sewell book. Just read that. Did you also see that someone was like posting about all the omnibuses they got, and they were getting dogged because they picked up like Grant Morrison's Action Comics omnibus?
What? Really?
Yeah, it was like someone was saying, "Oh, that's a red flag," and I go, "Just let the person read what they like.
The
What is
gatekeeping and stuff
you
is just
people?"
ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
But again, it's like the new 52 fans don't read the comics. You realize the people that like the new 52 comics, Britt, are accused of not reading comics. Remember,
Right.
these are the people, Britt. Remember a couple of weeks ago when it was a debate? Do you have to read comics to be a comic book fan?
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, if you have to ask that question, you're not a comic book fan. Anyway, so you had all this, and by the Super Wonder thing came out because one of the things that they wanted to do with Superman, and I love that Jim Lee documentary because it literally outlines this. They felt that Superman had become stale, so they were like, okay, so let's like modernize Superman. So that's when they modernized the suit. That's when they decided to dissolve the marriage to Lois, and then from there they were like, let's just reboot everything. So that's what they eventually did. And then obviously, as Jim Lee said, if we dissolve the marriage to Lois, who's the next logical choice?
Right. It's Diana. And that's another thing to me is, you know, the I see some Superman fans, say, well, inevitably he will be back with Lois, but that wasn't going to happen with New 52. But they felt safer and I guess more, well, safer and secure that if it was Maxima or if it was Alana, it was guaranteed that he would be with Lois, at some point. But Diana, again, she gives that um, unpredictableness. She gives that insecurity and make it feel, like a threat. So when these fans say that Superman, just because he wasn't in a relationship with Lois and having him with Diana, no, it gives you so much more because how could you market him with Maxima knowing the history there? And who cares really about Lana in that way? No, you need a marketing hook.
Yeah, it's like what's more what's more marketable, Britt, than okay, let's put Superman, the most iconic male superhero with the most iconic female superhero. That
Right.
seems okay to me, but it's like again, how are people supposed to role play as Lois? Oh my gosh. But so this is all well and good. Now let's talk about the problems with the new 52. Chief among it, they're clearly so as a Green Lantern fan, I appreciate this, but they still were trying to tell me, Britt, that Blackest Night happened, even though half the important characters to Blackest Night didn't exist.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
that was a problem.
okay. So the thing is, again, it was, as I said earlier, creators were like the possessive ex, that can't move on from the past. And you also have Batman and Green Lantern as the successful franchises. So no, they didn't want to reboot those because those were actually the ones that were selling. But yeah, continuity wise, it was a mess.
Yeah, like Batman had like 5 Robins in 5 years. I'm like, that doesn't work.
Yeah, but I mean, they still haven't, really gotten that cleared because again, with Rebirth, what that was supposed to do was give back like I think the 10 years that they calculated that's supposed to be. But I mean, the way new history was, none of it still makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I see. Well, yeah, there is that. And when they try and like force in the new 52 kind of lore into like this universe, I'm like,
Honestly,
what's
it's just
going on?
everything that no one cares for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's like that doesn't really help sales, man. That doesn't really work. But again, some people don't care about sales. And it's like but it's like the other thing that they did, which I felt was like a big mistake, they put a number behind like this because it said 5 years. And this is the problem with like James Gunn's giving like 30 years, 300 years and stuff. Because you never say that. You say a long time ago. Marvel does this well, where they're like, okay, a long time ago this happened. A long time ago Spider-Man was cloned and stuff. But they never really give a specific date, because that will bite you in the ass when you're writing stories and trying to keep the timeline consistent. But they were like, no, 5 years. The other thing that this kind of did, and I get it, they took away like Black Canary and Oliver's relationship, which I get because that they were together for like ever. We've talked about that for the most part, but they got rid of storylines, and it's like a lot of stuff was like, I feel like the other thing that the new 52 had was a lot of problems with editorial, as we'll talk about in a sec. But Britt, what did you kind of see as like the problems with this initiative?
It really was communication, and just creatives not being creative enough, not trying to invest. They were stubborn, and it fell apart. And I mean, again, with the pressure of WB, you had a limited time to make something up, but they could have taken what they had, and behind the scenes, as they had that year or so of it getting started, to have another team or something sort things out, for the better. And I would say around the second year or so, start slowing things down to get it together. But it seemed like they were just so focused on, we have to keep this going for WB, that it really, I think that really became the downfall.
Yeah, I'll give you that. So then we get to the editorial inconsistency. This is where it really fell out. And I'm sorry, Britt, I had to use an image of Superman reborn. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. But so one of the problems that you had with this, so here's a good example. Grant Morrison was writing Action Comics, which takes place 5 years in the past. George Perez was writing Superman, which had taken place in the modern day. The problem is Grant was not communicating what he was doing, and obviously George has to have a general idea of what Perez is doing so that he knows what not to contradict and such, and what to reference. But Grant was not communicating. Like you said, communication was like the main thing.
Right. And I mean, Perez, he was pretty much fed up with DC because of, you know, um, in a sense, the interruption of his Wonder Woman run, and that interference with that. So it, it just really, built up for Perez. And that's why he pretty much, was done with DC after that. And even with Azzarello, and with trying to keep Wonder Woman, so close to his chest, and not communicating with the characters that he used, her supporting cast. So Sewell actually said that in story about not having, the Justice League or Superman within her book to help with the gods and stuff like that. No, no, you don't necessarily need them, but just to feel that it matters, and that it is a story that's, within that time or that timeline or whatever, you do need some type of cameo or mention of what's going on in Diana's life, outside of the gods. Or yeah, have the Justice League cameo and fight them or something like that. So that is what Sewell um it, had to say about that. That the communication is just so off, to where, yeah, I like that he created Hesha, but at the same time, it just felt like he needed to still work around um Azzarello's limits, and that really hurt
Yeah.
hurt some of the book as well, because although he can write Diana, and he can write her world, but to not be able to have her talk to her mother as she wanted to, or as he wanted her to, for Clark to meet Hippolyta and the Amazons. That sort of storytelling is what makes it feel so small, and what makes it feel irrelevant or pointless when you have those limits set.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the problem with like here's the funny part about it. The Azzarello run was so like separate in terms of continuity, but yet it did stuff that would really dog it, because that is one of the weaknesses of Superman in the New 52 is that Clark never met Diana's mom when they were dating. And then they did the dumbass move and was like, oh yeah, she's never actually been home. That was just an illusion. Okay, how do you explain Superman and Deathstroke showing up on Themyscira? Explain that to me.
Honestly, Rucker didn't think no more than trying to be petty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But then you get to this where the problem so you had like a lot of like, so the planning was weak. Then you have Rebirth, which is basically the apology tour. And it's like, everyone's like, okay, return to pre-Flashpoint Superman, even though the book that they gave that Superman where he was a coward flopped. Like, when you look at the sales comparison, it's not even close compared to what they did. I remember when the Clovis fans tried to like rally around and say, we need to show DC that this is the real power couple. Everyone buy this book.
Exactly. That was quite embarrassing.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah, it really, I mean, to show that at that time DC was trying to coddle, the more aggressive fans, because they really became more aggressive, especially on the Bird app. You know, you had artists and writers actually say, come out and say how aggressive the fans are. Um, I think one almost had to get a restraining order or something, or did at some point.
Oh yeah, and it's like again, it's like even Sewell and Daniel were talking about how they got heat just for putting Superman with with Diana. I'm like,
Yeah.
at what point do these fans admit that they have no life?
Right. Yeah. Charles was told to jump off a bridge. Daniel, when his wife was, going through her treatment of cancer, they mocked her with that, saying, well, you wrote, it was kind of like that's what you get for writing or drawing, Clark and Diana together. And I'm just like, y'all definitely need to go get a straitjacket or something. Because to blur the lines of reality and fiction and be so parasocial and try to live vicariously through characters, this is fake. This is the real world. So,
All right, Britt, I gotta play the clip. This is for all you people that do act like that. Hang on, where is it? Okay, here we go.
Okay, they're talking about fictional characters. Fictional characters.
One more. If you're reacting that way to someone, this is my reaction to you.
Le who? The her.
And by Maroon says, Rebirth, merging them together is the dumbest thing ever. We don't care for post-crisis. Why merge them? Well, yeah, it really what the merging was, because that was their way of doing a crisis without doing a crisis, because that merged their histories as well. So that's how they retconned out SuperWonder by Jurgens' own admission, mind you. By the way, here's the story around that, Britt. I've said this on the show, but I might as well say it now. I was just getting out of Alien Covenant. Dog doo-doo of a movie, Britt. So the credits are playing. I check my phone. This is right when that issue came out. and then he said that it was to get rid of SuperWonder. That was when I decided I'm gonna take a break from comics, and I took a break for 4 years, Britt. That was when I was out. I was like, okay, you know what, Jurgens? That's when I lost a lot of respect for Jurgens. Yeah, he wrote a lot of Superman stories people read. The problem is, if you're unprofessional enough to bash that, to like say, oh yeah, our thing was to wipe out this continuity. Yeah, you're a problem.
Yeah, it really, I mean, how petty and insecure do you have to be? And even with Diana's history, with Rucko, what he did, if you're going back to post-crisis, she shouldn't be with Steve at all. Actually, Steve is supposed to be married to Etta. So, and if you want to get even deeper and technically, Steve is like Diana's spiritual blood brother from Diana Rockwell. So yeah, with saying we're going back to post-crisis, you're still, that was a lie. And, whatever this is now is just making things worse.
Yeah, exactly. And by Britt, we may have to do an episode talking about the fallout of Superman Reborn. I'm going to insist on that because that would actually be really fun to rant about that. But it's like, yeah. And by the way, Maroon says comics aren't even doing well right now. How much more comic book stores need to be slowing before DC realize that continuity is done? Well, continuity is not the problem. It's writers unwilling to let go, because that's the problem. Too many of these writers. Because here's the thing. I get that some of them were upset that those stories that they were writing and planned to write were like undone by the reboot. Tough. You're working for a big corporation. That this thing happens sometimes. I get it.
Yeah, that, and I mean, you have to move forward. You can't
also, the previous continuity nearly got rid of DC Comics.
Right. And then even after Rebirth and stuff, Dandy Vio, he said that, yeah, Rebirth seemed good on paper, but in reality, it wasn't. They did, the double shipping and everything like that. But continuity wise and story wise, it was very much just comfort.
Which makes the DC documentary even more hilarious. Because remember when they talk about the New 52 being awesome, then they don't say a peep about Rebirth.
Exactly.
That was the people at Britt. You should have seen. I was on the edge of my seat because I'm waiting for the shoe to drop, because this is inevitably what happens. They'll be praising this, and then they'll say something like, "Yeah, but we got too far away in our need to like modernize. We got too far away. Not a peep." And to the point where, Britt, that was what people on Twitter were angry about with the documentary. They're like, they didn't even mention how Rebirth saved DC.
I mean, that is why they don't even mention the documentary and ignore it, act like it doesn't exist, because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Exactly. And by Maroon, I'm glad you're here, man. So appealing to these post-crisis fans is not worth it. You should always try to appeal to new readers. That's why a whole new generation grew up on SuperWonder, the new Justice lineup, and you took that away. Well, yeah, and it's like they took it away because some people, again, could not let it go. And they claim, hey, if we'd gotten an actual conclusion, we would have moved on. No, you wouldn't.
Hell no.
Like, stop trying to sound like you're more reasonable than you actually are.
Right.
Like, I'm like, guys, no. And by the way, most of these books got conclusions. So just stop with this. The conclusions actually happened. You just didn't like the conclusions. I'm just like, the hell? So, Britt, explain why the new 52 could have worked.
Okay, so again, if you were to have the investment, the creatives who actually care to be creative, it actually, the storylines and everything that they had, it would have lasted. Jeff Johns, he was juggling, being the president, being creative officer with DCEU and everything like that. So he did have a Aquaman event, um, I think 70s or something like that.
Hmm.
So, that would have been a big storyline. You had Charles Sewell, if editorial didn't take him off the book, he had a Wonder Woman event or, centric arc to do.
Yeah.
You had Donna going to be introduced in the Super Wonder book. So you had all of these different ideas and concepts coming back slowly. It's just, again, you listen to the wrong crowd.
Exactly. Here's the other thing that I think would have definitely helped. If so, let's Flashpoint happens and they relaunch the line. They should have also done a new history of the DC universe immediately after Flashpoint, because then you can explain, okay, this is how the continuity works. This is how like that you could try to at least line up the 5 years in a clear to understand way.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah,
That's what you really need.
you honestly, it's a lot of things that they could have done. It was so easy, honestly, to rectify everything.
Barry Maroon says the best part. The worst part is that they still tease Super Wonder. They still bring Cyborg back to the Justice League. They keep Aquaman's new 52 story. It's like they know the new 52 was correct, but speculators buying variant covers is what matters. Yeah, I know, right?
Right.
It definitely is that. But yeah, if New 52 had a roadmap, I think they would have like fought through the entire the point there.
Exactly.
And again, you bring an excellent point. They should have rebooted Green Lantern and Batman, because then you could have told modern versions of like Blackest Night or stuff, or Nightfall. Because again, this is why I hold up Superman Doomed. Superman Doomed is a modern version of the death of Superman. It's just it doesn't kill Superman, obviously. But if he turned into Doomsday totally, Superman would technically have died.
And what also makes that story better than Death of Superman is because it's not a slugfest. It's not a who can punch who the hardest. It is a mental challenge for Clark.
And Diana, because remember, she almost kills him because again, and this is why I can't stand Steve Trevor or Lois. Hey, so Britt, what's that special deal that Superman and Wonder Woman have?
Right, the world comes first.
Exactly. Take notes, Tom King. But that's the whole thing. She was willing to kill him if he became a threat. Luckily, obviously that didn't come to this. But still, I really dug how that worked. And even to your point, the follow-up to it is not just like Superman's doing stuff, then you see a fist, and then it's like Doomsday crushes a bird. No, it's like you have the fight to Doomsday, but then you have Superman like fighting through Doomsday. Then you have, to top it all off, not only Super Doom, a Brainiac invasion as well. So it's like it keeps escalating, but it still manages. For the way Penelope says, I still boycott DC for getting rid of Super Wonder. I mean, you can boycott the new stuff, but they still reprint the good new 52 stuff. I'm still waiting for an omnibus or like an oversized hardcover that at least has the 12 issues with Sewell, but who knows about that point. I will say Super Doomed is the reason why when I read volume 2, Britt, it was the most confusing thing in the world because it just takes the Superman Wonder Woman versions. So when I got the actual like omnibus of Doomed, I was like, oh, this makes much more sense.
Exactly. I mean, they really should have had that event or so like somewhere else, because it really took out a lot of the story and again what Sewell had intended, and trying to have it as a tie-in, and just going to another book. Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like, but luckily the parts that were in that about Doom were amazing. I also like the one where they even referenced the plant that Superman gave her, and he's like, yeah, you have to feed it with oil. She goes, I watered it. He's like, no, you have to give it oil, and then turns into an oil creature, and then Superman actually has to talk to Swamp Thing and motivate Swamp Thing to try and talk to this alien, which was really cool. I really like that. Penelope says Superman and Lois is generally disgusting. To that, I present to you this.
How would you like me to make your life a living hell?
Well, I'm not really ready for a relationship, Lois, but thank you for asking.
I swear, when I was watching Ace Ventura and that name popped up, because I hadn't seen that movie in years, Britt, and I forgot her name is literally Lois. And I was like,
that is funny.
Clip it. But yeah, it's like the new 52 in many ways was DC's Ultimate Universe. It just happened to occupy the slot. It was the main continuity. But yeah, here's the thing, Britt. Before we get to Absolute, actually, as a transition to Absolute, here's the thing. People have said the new 52 was an Elseworlds. Okay, we would accept it. Here's the problem with that. It's exactly what's happening nowadays. Okay, so let's go the Absolute first. Okay, so the Absolute Universe is like selling up the yin yang. But the thing is, what's happening to the main line, Britt?
Is free falling. And the thing is with that whole thing about saying if New 52 was an Elseworld, they would accept it. No, you wouldn't. Because if they were to have, SuperWonder or anything like that, they would still complain. Because even in the Absolute, universe, they're still complaining about not wanting Diana with Steve or, Batcat has to be together. Even with Absolute Superman, they are trying to force him with Lois, So no, they are totally lying that they would accept it. They wouldn't.
Yeah, and by Maureen says, does anyone even read the current Justice League book? How bad can your mainline be that you add every character to the Justice League and it still sells terrible? It's because, again, here's the thing, Britt. Every character has been a member of the Justice League. As in the case of every time, like even the Scott Snyder run, you see an image of like the League of like inside the Hall of Justice. Every hero's there.
Right.
So I'm like, what's the difference? And it's like you don't deploy all the army at once in one incident. You still have small teams. So I'm like, how is this different from the regular continuity? Besides the fact that like you can deploy a larger group of heroes, I get that, but it's like, okay, but regardless. So you have the Absolute Universe, which I will say, okay. So do you know how the actual Earth for the Absolute Universe happened, Britt?
It was, wasn't it from Dark Crisis?
Death Metal.
Oh, it was Death Metal?
So in the aftermath of Death Metal, there was an Earth called the Alpha Earth, which was still primordial. It was essentially a blank slate. So when they wanted to establish the Absolute Universe, Scott was like, they never did anything with it. That's the key thing. No one like claimed it. No one did anything with it. So Scott's like, dibs. So that's how that actually happened. And I'm like, okay, that actually works. That actually works. And then it's an Earth. The genius part of the Absolute Universe is it's an Earth where essentially evil is dominant because Darkseid is it's an Earth that's like run by Darkseid. And as Darkseid said in the same thing, as Darkseid said in DCKO, actually, he said somehow these characters still end up being good people.
Which honestly is a good thing, but it's still very safe, except for Batman, because Snyder definitely wants his Michael Bay, Frank Miller, Batman Son 2.0.
Yeah,
so
but here's the thing. I'm fine with the heroes being like the good guys trying to fight back against the world because I'd rather not have another evil Wonder Woman per se.
That's true. My only thing is that she can be good, but it feels like she's not challenged enough. It feels like she is able to, win fights, or that it has to be a happy ending. Even if this is a darker world, it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and Marin brings up an interesting part. It's funny how that even the Absolute, which is DC's only success, which all these DC fans praise, there's only one line which lay outside Absolute, the New 52. And it's very clear they took inspiration from the New 52 for this.
Right. I mean, they did say that this is New 52 done right, which honestly, the only thing done right was, and quote unquote, was have it as an alternate universe. But again, having this line as an alternate universe is taking away so much of, from the main line. And the main line is they're trying to ramp it up and everything like that, with the next level initiative
That's not going to
and
help.
right. But still, um, the ICV2 2025, sales, overall sales write up, absolute dominated. DC's only reliable sales are the absolute line.
Exactly. And by 1610 man brings up a good point. This is what it is. An alternate timeline and the main timeline being separate, that equals competition. That's why that's why DC is so hesitant to put SuperWonder in an Elseworlds, because it's like they know that book's gonna sell, it's gonna make Lois look like an idiot.
Right. I mean, exactly. You want money. So why not have Clark and Lois, if you want it in the main universe, whatever, have that. And then in an alternate verse, you have Clark and Diana. Tomorrowverse did that. You had mature Clark and Diana, Earth 2 versions there. And then, well, I would say that was very much an afterthought, but they had Earth 1 Superboy with Lois, just to please both sides of the fandom.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the funny part about it. And it's like when you look at the sales success about this, that like this is single-handedly saving the comic book medium. And what's Marvel doing? They're nuking their absolute universe. And I love how Scott Snyder was asked. He goes, "Yeah, we're not ending this anytime soon."
I think because at first Snyder said that he does have an ending.
Mm-hmm.
And then after, again, it's very reactionary though, because at first, like I said, he said that he had an ending and everything like that. But then after, the writing of the Ultimate Universe ending, that's when he switched and said, no, it's not ending anytime soon. So
Good.
yeah, I would say that I would like a little bit more of creators being genuine, and not so much as having such a impulsive, reactive, attitude about things. Because if you listen so much to these fans and give them that because you feel like, oh, if we don't do this, then, fans won't support or, things like that. How can you run a business that way?
Yeah, exactly. Buddy, what's up, Tevia? How you doing, man? And then, so Britt, explain to us why the Absolute Universe works so well. Besides the fact that Tom King's Wonder Woman sucks so much. I'm sorry, I had to.
Right. Well, of course, it didn't replace main continuity, even if it does need to. Yeah, it didn't do that. You do have a darker tone, and I think Snyder also said that he kind of was influenced by anime or manga. So
Mm-hmm.
so that is pretty much an influence there, which is again you are tapping into the newer generation because manga is dominating comic books overall. That in sales and in adaptations, whether it is the anime or live action. So yeah, tapping into that younger generation is key. But that was key for New 52. It's just you had the old guard giving limitations. Um, you also have a change. You you have the changes in origin and things like that. They are a little bit harsher or trying to be, but they still have the core aspect of their character. You have Diana. She was at first supposed to be the ruthless goddess of war. You know, as I said earlier, what fans say New 52 was. But Kelly Thompson, she said she couldn't make the story work. So she had Diana as the same main verse Diana she's supposed to be. It's just her costume is different. You know, her design is different.
Which that's a good thing in this current environment.
I mean, honestly, the thing is, again, the world is supposed to be darker. Design wise, Diana is darker with that look, but her world is so it's still a little bit light, you know, especially I think from mm, I think that was issue 16
Mhm.
where she was, you know, basically being Snow White, where she was surrounded by animals and things like that. You know, it's just some things like that is you can definitely tell it's playing a little bit too safe because you don't want to take too many risks, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
and Penelope, by the way, I'm very happy to have you here. She goes, it's crazy how the new 52 has done all this before. Yeah, I know, right? It's
right.
really funny about that. It's like,
Um,
where have I heard this before?
you also have in Absolute Wonder Woman the gods. You know, well, you have the goddesses, but it is mostly the gods within her world.
Who are designed so much better than New 52.
I mean, they do because you want that more drastic, mythical type look for them in the Absolute. What Azarella was going for was they could blend in, you know, with
Okay, Poseidon being a fish man.
well, not him, of course.
Hades being a child with a candle for her head.
Well, not them. I'm talking about. I was referring to Apollo and Strife.
True. And Apollo is so dope.
Right. You all also have her. I mean, she is a fighter. You know, she is that beacon of light that she is supposed to be. As I said, it's just playing a little bit safe. The Superman is definitely safe. He already has the Clark Kent name again. He is in Smallville. Um, even though Aaron did say he's going to tap into the angry immigrant, don't know
Well,
because he
here's the
said
thing,
that
Britt. So far, I haven't seen Clark go by Clark Kent.
he only goes by that in Smallville.
Yeah, so that's not really the thing. It's like so far he's not even a reporter. He's just Superman.
Yeah, I mean, still though,
That's the difference, though. Let's be fair. Let's be fair.
the difference is very if you squint.
Oh, by the way,
So,
Cameron says, speaking of Apollo, if the New 52 kept going, I would make it a constant gag of Clark beating Apollo. You and me both, brother. You and me both, brother. I would have it a coming gag, and Clark eventually goes, "Why you still don't know that much about me?"
right.
That's my favorite Superman moment
Hmm.
of all time ever. Anyway, Britt, sorry. Continue.
No. So yeah, and he has the shaggy hair and everything. I did like the cape, you know, and I
Mm-hmm.
did like that um Laura is the one that made the suit, you know, so that was one thing that was good.
And
Um,
Britt, the fact that so many Kryptonians actually made it off the planet means that there's so much more that can be done with him.
that's true. If
So
they do so.
yeah, so with Superman, I would ask just give it a shot because the main Earth, and as long as Darkseid is like still influencing the Absolute Universe, which it still is, it's not going to be like the main Earth.
True, true.
So
Um,
yeah, just give it a shot.
okay.
For me, okay, for me, please.
Maybe. Uh, so then you have Batman, and of course, as I said, I always say that he is a Michael Bay and Frank Miller love child.
Hmm.
Um, very bombastic with the designs, ambitious. Very. Snyder is very obsessed with horror, so you can definitely tell that
Oh yeah.
his horror obsession is within this book heavily. He already indicated that, whatever he's going to do to Batman, in that, I guess he's going to get his ass kicked like 10 million times. So it's going to get worse from here. And I mean, if you are going to challenge Batman as big booty as he is, then yeah, go by all means do so. I think that that is really why, Batman is such a juggernaut of a seller. The one thing that I would say is that Snyder wanted Batman to have like a baby face, being that he is like 22,
Hmm.
but the variant covers, I think it is a absolute Batman statue and something else, but
It's
he
a hot
looks,
toy.
like he's about 40 years old.
That could be just some artists that have drawn Batman as a certain age for so long. I can
Yeah,
kind of get that.
the only artist that draws, Bruce with the baby face is the main artist of the absolute book.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Dragotta. Dragotta is also the one that drew a really weirdly proportioned Absolute Wonder Woman with like the really tiny head. I'm like, the
It
hell is this?
was
But Britt, by the way, so as we're going through Green Lantern, I just want to say this for Absolute books. You, I would recommend you try out Absolute Green Lantern. I think you would actually enjoy that.
okay. I'll see.
Yeah, it's like the other Absolute books. The Trinity are the best Absolute books of the pair. Martian Manhunter, that book is really hard to understand what the hell is happening in
It's
that
whack.
book.
You got to be high as hell to read
Oh,
that book.
oh yeah. But Absolute Flash is great. Absolute Green Lantern is amazing. I can't wait for Absolute Catwoman. That's gonna be really fun as a mini series. But the thing is, with the Absolute books, it's like Absolute has become its own brand where so far, if you just slap Absolute onto something, it will sell. So it's like that's why I think DC is adding a bunch of stuff to this, and I think they're trying to. I think I wouldn't be surprised if eventually like Paramount comes in and is like, just do Absolute books. That's selling. Your other stuff isn't. I wouldn't be surprised if, as Sexteen Man says, if like in the Absolute Crisis that was teased after DCKO, they do like make the Absolute Earth the main Earth. That would be utterly hilarious.
I mean, that would be something, but at the same time, as far as like the look go,
Mm-hmm.
you really can't have that as your main thing
Mm-hmm.
because the differences is what has been taken away. You know,
Exactly.
like
And also here's the thing, Britt. So if DC is selling Absolute, here's the problem. So DC seems a lot like it's coasting on Absolute, right?
right,
What happens when the Absolute bubble pops? What does DC have?
nothing.
If their other stuff isn't selling, and the DC and the Absolute universe finally pops, which it inevitably will, all these initiatives happen. What are they going to be left with?
Right, nothing. I mean,
That's
they
when
would.
I say pull the hard reboot button.
I mean, at this point, they really do need it because you have these legacy characters that honestly showed themselves as not like, again, the Bird app, Tumblr, and everything like that. They can love these characters, but they don't love the characters in the sense of how they're written. And of course, that is, something because how would you love your favorite character written if it's poor? But it's the fact that people go with headcanons anyway. So rebooting this, doing another clean slate and everything, and actually putting your foot down and saying, no, we're going to keep going with this because we need it, then yeah, they absolutely need that. But to keep trying to make this continuity work and adding things or retconning things and even Mark Wade, new history book, he already said that it was going to be contradicted. So what was the point of it? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was like with the new history book. I guess it's like to clarify the time. Well, actually, the purpose of the new history for Wade's purpose was it was supposed to be a document just for the DC creative, so you can have like an idea of what the canon looks like. And then they also did as a comic book.
Okay, but canon is still messed up because you could say, I mean, it was just messed up, from start to finish.
Yeah, exactly. That's really like, but the point is, it's like with this is like if you're, this is why again you have to put the same amount of like discernment with like your absolute line that you're putting into the main line, because again this will pop, inevitably this will happen. Let's say this stops selling, and then DC is left with nothing because again these are some of the only DC books that sell well, as we said when we started this. So it's like DC really has to care more about the main line.
Right.
But what do we know, Britt? What do we know? And also, here's how you know this sold. They're reprinting every single issue.
Right.
Like everyone. But it's like, where are we at this point? But it's like eventually they're gonna have to realize this. Well, and hopefully that is soon, so we could actually get some talent on like particularly Wonder Woman. But we'll see what happens. They're fine with Green Lantern, as we'll see later. But what's the big lessons here, Britt?
Well, obviously, in order to coddle, your older midlife crisis fans, you can't have a reboot. You have to have an alternate universe, even if it does overshadow your main verse, it has to be separated. You have to have communication. That is the key. You have to have a plan. Um, you have to invest and you have to be just well, yeah, put your foot down and actually, make this work. It's not about just throwing, you know, um, shit to the wall and trying to see if it sticks. You are actually trying to keep this company going.
Yeah, exactly. Zed. Oh my gosh. Hi guys, it's Absolute Lowest Zed. Yeah. Oh god, I love you, Zed. Never change, brother. Never change. I'm gonna give you this. Hang on. I'm gonna give you. Let's see. What's a good clip? Okay, I'll give you this. All right. So let's come to our conclusions, Britt.
Okay, yeah. So above all, these initiatives came because they tried to gain new readers. Um, again, for better or worse. They and it wasn't just moving into a new era. It was trying to keep the companies going because as you stated, earlier, Marvel went bankrupt. Um, DC, with Death of Superman, it almost caused an entire industry crash, and that is what happened. As a result of that, we had Kingdom Come. That basically saved the industry as well, and you also got that's actually where message boards were born from too, because so many people were talking about that book, and that's pretty much what the idea of these initiatives is about. Just creating new ideas, letting it, if they allow it to, flourish and, let these characters move into different directions. You can't keep them stagnant. Now, with Marvel, they're just going to keep, as I said, they have a threshold probably, and they'll reboot the same books over and over again.
Yeah.
With DC, they'll keep the books long, until it just hits rock bottom completely. But what they need to do is stop holding on to the past,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
give more to characters that actually deserve, books, even if it is um, a character that they feel might not, have the sales. If you can give John Kent a book, two books, and even if it wasn't a bestseller, then you can give Vixen a book. You can try to make, well, Black Lightning did have a book. Um, Out Starfire, you can give her a book, or just anything like that. And Wonder Woman, completely. If you see that, while yes, her personality is pretty much in the safe zone for with Absolute. It's still the fact that Thompson respects that that is her personality, and that's why the book is selling.
The other thing that shows that if you put a good book on a good writer on the Wonder Woman book, it will sell. Number one. Number two, instead of giving like a D-lister a book like that, how about this? If you're gonna lose money on a book, lose money on a Sensation Comics.
Something like that. I mean, Diana deserves more books. It's not to limit her to just one main book and then having to rely on Absolute is not a good look at all.
Yeah, and by the way, Zed says mainline DC should be relegated to a side universe. I got news for you, buddy. It already is.
Yeah, technically it already is.
It literally already is. I'm just telling you, dude. Oh yeah, they gave Lois a one shot when she was Superwoman, Britt.
And it did not sell.
Kind of funny how Lois giving it's almost like giving someone powers isn't a good idea for a love interest. Isn't that funny?
I mean,
But
they've tried with like Mary Jane and everything, but again, it doesn't work, and when it doesn't work, they'll either, stop trying or they'll just find different ideas. But DC is, like I said, they're very much um, hell bent on keeping the past, and that is really hurting them.
yep, exactly. So tell me about what you thought of Green Lantern number 19.
All right, so
By the way, all you people in the chat that were bashing the mainline, read Green Lantern. Read Green Lantern. Go on, Britt.
okay, so this is pretty much a setup issue
Yeah.
of the next arc or so,
Yeah.
next storyline. Um, you have a new character, you have Kyle Rayner and Connor Kent. Um, the funny thing about that with Connor, I think Kathy was supposed to be in this book as well, but um, Adams was it was rejected because Kathy, I guess, Tom King having her in the Wonder Woman book, she was caught up. I mean,
Oh, okay.
she's not really in the Wonder Woman book because if she's in the future, she's dead. If she's in the present, she is irrelevant or whatever.
She's
Babysitting, sitting
babysitting a doll.
right. So an Annabelle doll.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but you have this new character and just that whole dynamic is really fun. You have the balancing act of team building and world building and trying to bring in still new readers. It's basically a jumping on point as well. You do have multiple artists, which is fine. It doesn't take away too much of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's very light and is light in a sense of it's not so much action that you would think, but again, it is that setup issue. So
Yeah.
I did give it a 7 out of 10, but I would say mm, it's between a 7 and 8.
Yeah, and trust me, the arc that this is setting up is awesome. So I think you're really in for a treat, and a lot of this is gonna be like digging deep into DC lore, and it's really going to really expand on Lantern stuff. And also, again, it's really cool seeing Carol as a member of the Justice League. And again, when we talked to Jeremy Adams about that, and he was talking about how like he pushed for Carol to be on the league, I'm like, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's official. This is the last time I'm going to review Bomb Queen on this show because something happens in this issue. I'm not going to describe. Britt knows what, because I told her this. I'm like, pick a different book. Something happens in this where I'm like, you know how I've been complaining about like sometimes this series goes a little too far. Well, let me put it this way. They did something in this that makes the boys' comics look like they actually adhered to the Comics Code Authority.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, no, I'm done. I'm out of this. So, Britt, what's the book that I'm going to be reviewing on the channel now?
Storm.
Yep. Here you go.
I'm guessing it is I want to say 2024. Because I didn't know that it rebooted. So of course that would be 2026, but I thought it was ongoing. So I would think that was 2024, 2025.
Yep, 2024 is the reboot. Is the one that just ended, but they rebooted with a number 1.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that'll be the one that we're doing. And Lord Zez is really praying the Absolute Universe doesn't put Absolute Superman with Absolute Lois. Please don't be boring, DC. We'll see, but I highly doubt that they'll actually do that.
I don't know, because Snyder, he is still a traditionalist, so just because it is different elements, I feel like it's more design-wise than character and dynamic-wise and relationship-wise.
Yeah, fair enough. But we'll see, like if they actually like again, because I hope we get an Absolute Superman meeting Absolute Wonder Woman, and I swear if they do Absolute Super Wonder, I will never say anything bad about this again.
I don't know. I mean, Snyder did indicate that they will meet, but I feel like it's going to be more of a group meeting than a one-on-one. I don't think it's going to be something personal like that.
Well, again, Superman and Wonder Woman met each other in the Justice League book.
I mean, but you can feel the vibe, that it was going to be something personal. I just don't know. I don't think that Snyder would allow that.
I will say, though, so here's the fun thing about the Earth 2 book, everyone. That's the first time Superman met Wonder Woman. Okay. What happens in the Superman Batman book, Superman and Batman, it's in the first 4 issues. So it's in the beginning of the series, Britt.
Mm-hmm.
Superman and Batman, and it's Jeans and T-shirt Clark. It's their first meeting. They end up getting teleported to Earth 2, and it's so good. So Earth 2 Superman introduced him to Wonder Woman, and then Superman goes, he's a gap and everything like that. He's like, oh, hi. And I'm like, when I was reading that, I'm like, oh, that's when he actually first met her. That's awesome. I'm like, I didn't know that. And
so
then
he was like, so basically he was like, so when I meet my Earth's Wonder Woman, I'm definitely going to pursue her.
Oh yeah, he's like, oh okay. And the funny part is that the way Wonder Woman shows up is Earth 2 Lois goes, so who are you dating, Superman? And he goes, I'm not dating anyone. Diana flies in. And I'm like, oh, that is excellent. I will say a funny part about this is when Earth 2 Lois, Clark says that like on his Earth, him and Lois are just friends, and then Earth 2 Lois says, "You're lost."
I don't think so.
Well, yeah, yeah. But at the very least, it's like that was one of the new 52 things that I'm like, oh, that is interesting. It also kind of gives a little more context around Superman saying, you're strong. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, okay. You're like, oh, she's just like the other Diana. Only I could date this one. All right. And she won't die. That is the other thing. Is like I'm hoping that I need to get more of the Batman Superman books, because again there is that issue when Batman and Superman are like, let's say like ethereal and go to Earth 2 and then see them die, and then Superman says, I see my love die, and it's Diana.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's very nice. That's very nice. But yeah, so that's where I think we're gonna leave it. So in the main, so Britt, now that you have a general idea of Marvel's Ultimate Universe, what do you think?
I mean, it's a mess, but DC is messier. So
okay, I'll give you that. Well, at least in the Absolute Universe, no one has like cannibalized someone and said they taste like chicken. So
I mean, you
there's
never know
that.
because Snyder probably will do that in the Batman book.
I mean, he does have like absolute killer croc, a literal monster. So there you go.
Right.
So that works. Oh, I love Cameron. Your loss? No, just no. Yeah. But anyway, Britt, what stories you want to tease us with?
All right. So of course we have Shelter and Odyssey. I'm finishing up another one shot that again I'm referencing from the Twitter thread of ideas. Um, and more of tonight one shot, finishing up that too.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so tomorrow I will be posting. I wanted to wait until Mother's Day or so. I might still do that. If not, then I will be posting the second one shot from the Twitter thread of ideas. Um, as far as threads, actually my own threads on Twitter. I didn't expect the one that I posted earlier to
I saw that.
to blow up. I was just like, it was so random. I was like, oh, okay. But
I
I will
saw
be
that. That was great.
I will be doing more of those. Pretty much just talking about Wonder Woman's character, because it is a lot of misconceptions of who she is, and she's either belittled for who she is, or people who claim to be her fans have her as such a surface level of ideas. So to say that she's the spirit of truth, okay, but what does that mean? Things like that. And also, I will do my big thread of post-crisis uh, her history review. That is taking longer than expected because it is a lot. Um, And yeah, I probably will talk about her dynamics and her relationships. I do have a thread about the connection of Perez dynamics. So it will be Hippolyta and Philippus connecting with, say, Steve and Etta. How these loyal friends and they're loyal and their older friends falling in love, being together, having a happy ending. And of course, we have to have Diana and Clark versus Hippolyta and Hercules, what that means. And we also have the mother connections of Hippolyta, Diana with Julia with Vanessa. And then, of course, the sisterhood with Diana and Vanessa. So that will be a thread that probably will be sometime next week. And then I have a thread for Tomorrowverse, basically saying that she's underrated because I see again a lot of fans do not want to give her credit for being like the best depiction in animation just because she was with Clark.
Okay. Well, hello, tourists.
Right.
Because I'm sorry, no. If that disqualifies any version of Wonder Woman from being your favorite, and no matter what they do, I'm sorry, you're a problem.
That's true. I mean, she did not take a backseat from him, and of course, we saw, that big blow up when the Crisis Part 1 came about, and just that 45 seconds just turned, Twitter to hell. So yeah, I'm just trying to give her flowers that she needed or deserved.
Hell, well, yeah, it's because we're actual fans, Britt.
Right.
But as for me, tomorrow I'm gonna be doing a stream at about 3:30 or so. I'm gonna be doing a stream discussing Marston's Wonder Woman. In other words, the Golden Age Wonder Woman. What I think about it, and that's gonna be a fun one. As for Wonder Woman Wednesday, I haven't decided what I want to do this week, but I will say I've been really enjoying covering the different versions of Absolute Steve, even though Britt doesn't like hearing Steve's name.
Hell no.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as like other comics and stuff, on Thursday for Under Two Capes, we're going to be discussing the Earth 2 New 52 in more detail. For movie night, we're going to be talking about Brightburn. I cannot wait to blast that crappy fan fiction of a Superman movie. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I get that having an evil Superman is a popular thing, or was a popular thing. Can they at least make it a good movie?
Right.
Because Brightburn is not a good movie when you really get down to it. By Britt, that should be an episode that we should do, is like the worst evil Superman.
I thought we did, but
we'll do more.
Just talk about.
Yeah, I got it. We'll just talk about Brightburn and just talk about how crappy it is. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Stay work, everyone. By the way, like, comment, subscribe for more awesome content. That we've been doing this for 134 episodes. And I keep going. Stay work, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs with General Zod or Satan. Zois and Steve Trevor is a sack of moldy potatoes, like moldy potatoes that's been in cow manure. It's been like rolled up and like thrown up a couple of times. Zois and Max of Path for Life. I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.